What's up, Bangalore? Is everybody having a good time? Awesome. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about entrepreneurial spirit this morning, okay? Because as JS said, that I am an entrepreneur. I have my own company, and it's called Applebrook Consulting, or ABC. There's some stickers on the chairs. So as Maduro was saying, those of you who sat in the front, got the benefit of having some stickers. There's a few in the back, and so on. My PowerPoint's going all crazy. I don't know what's going on with that. If you could just rewind it back to the first slide, please. All right, that's good. Just leave it right there. So actually, it's selfie time. So what I would like for everyone to do is take out your smartphones right now, everybody, okay? Everybody take out your smartphones right now and take a selfie, all right, of yourself, obviously. Okay, sure. All right, ready? Okay. All right. So take the selfie and wrap that up, and I'll continue on. All right. Here's my Twitter handle in case you want to tweet to me or connect with me on Twitter, and hashtag Real World Agility. I'm going to be talking a little bit about myself this morning. As Jay has said, I apologize for the foot. A friend of mine heard that I was keynoting in Bangalore, and he said, break a leg. And I guess I shouldn't be so literal, right, in my interpretation. So if I start to say, "arr," it's because I'm feeling a little bit of a pirate vibe, like Jack Sparrow up here. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about myself, telling my story. So I appreciate you indulging me in a little bit of walking down my journey. But I'm going to make some key points about being an entrepreneur. And I hope that that will be valuable to you and you'll have some takeaways from this session, okay? So there's a little bit about me. As I said, I started this company, Applebrook Consulting. I do coaching and training for Agile all around the world. I'm the founder of Agile Delaware. And honestly, that's actually a very small thing. The group is fairly small. I'm from Delaware in the United States. So I founded that group, and it's grown over the last 5 years. I have a talk show with a colleague of mine, Stephen Forte. It's called Agile Next. And what it does is it looks at where the world is headed next with Agile, where the Agile movement is heading next, what's in store for Agile on the horizon, okay? On top of that, obviously, we talked about real-world agility. My book, it's full of practical experience for implementing Agile and practicing Agile in organizations, okay? It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and so on. All this is to say, and I'm highlighting these accomplishments not by way of bragging or self-promotion, but rather, it's all part of being an entrepreneur. It's a key part of my fabric and who I am. When I was younger, I've always been an entrepreneur, essentially. Even when I was younger, I had a lemonade stand, a paper route, I had a lawn mowing business. I started off when my parents got me my first computer when I was 12, and I wasn't so interested in video games. So I was using it more for practical purposes. And I started off just typing papers for people. And then I started getting into doing little programs for people, and so on. But I don't think this is so much different from many people around the world, right? I think entrepreneurial spirit is something that we're actually born with, all of us. We have that need and that interest to constantly be industrious, producing things, capitalizing on opportunities, and so on. So then I got into high school, and school in general. And that's when my entrepreneurial spirit started to die. I call it institutionalized, because that's when people start telling you no. People start telling you no, and you can't do this, and that's not acceptable, and so on, right? And initially, it's very daunting, right? If you have a spirit to fly and people are cutting your wings, it's not a very good feeling, is it? And that continued on as I entered the corporate world. I call it the system beatdown. Because none of us graduate college and say, man, I can't wait to get out there to the corporate world where I live the rest of my life in a cubicle and am marginalized by management. We all have greater ideals. We want to change the world. We want to accomplish things and make the world a better place. But unfortunately, we try things and then we get in trouble, right? And pretty soon you're like, man, I'm not going to try anything. I'm just going to keep my head down because I keep getting in trouble. So over the years of having the system beat down by the corporate world, I turned into this guy. Is that surprise? I actually can clean up a little bit. But what's missing from this picture? Yeah, well, tattoos. The tattoos were there, trust me. But the smile, right? The joy had left my life. I was an executive VP at a consulting firm. I was managing the entire QA practice. And I had about 150 people reporting to me. And I was a very command and control leader. PMP, I was a PMP. That says it all, right? So the joy had left from my life, and I wasn't a very happy person, and I wasn't making other people's lives very happy either. I was turning into that person that was, yelling at others and, making them feel like they were in trouble, and so on. So over the years, I've read numerous books. I met a client, and they handed me Ken Schwaber's book, Agile Software Development with Scrum. And being a good consultant, I wanted to make my client happy, and I knew they would have some questions about the book. So I read the book, and it was life-changing for me. I read it, and I said, wow, there's a different way of building things out there. It's called Agile. And I became very interested and hungry for more information. And so I was reading more books, and I went to Ken Schwaber's class and got my CSM up in Boston. This was back in 2006. And I went back to our managing director for the organization I was at, and I said, we really need to have an Agile practice, because this is the way of the future. Project management is dead. It just doesn't know it yet. And so we started this Agile practice, and it was fairly successful. And I've been coaching and training organizations for the last 10 years. And a big part of it is bringing joy back to the workplace, right? Helping other people fly and see that there's a different way of doing things that's more participative, inclusive, and more effective, as a matter of fact. Rather than having all the plans and trying to have all the answers up front, iterating and incrementing on what we build. There's a great book by Rich Sheridan called Joy, Inc. I highly recommend it because it talks about another organization where their whole culture was built up around these principles and concepts. So as time went on, I've been helping organizations, but what I find is they learn Scrum, but try to maintain the same mentality and mindset of command and control project management. So what I'm here to tell you and bring to you or suggest to you is, even when we're practicing Scrum, even if you're not planning to go out and start your own business, there's an important mindset or attitude towards even being on a Scrum team which is entrepreneurial spirit. And we're going to talk about some of the elements of entrepreneurial spirit right now. There's 5 key points. We're going to talk about motivation, self-awareness, risk-taking, being a pioneer, and being goal-driven. Okay? So the first thing, motivation. Understanding not only the motives of other people, but your own motivation is key. Motives are intentions, which are not really absolutely obvious, right? They're sort of veiled or hidden. They're under the surface. So understanding motivation is very key. And there's a great book by Daniel Pink called Drive, right? And a lot of people are talking about drive these days, right? The three things that motivate knowledge workers: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. I'm sure many of you have already read that or seen the TED Talk. If you haven't, there's a great book to check out. But I'm not going to belabor those points too much. Even beyond what motivates knowledge workers is the fact that entrepreneurs understand what motivates people and themselves. So they're in tune with their own motivations, right? It's really, what need am I providing? What problem am I trying to solve? That's where motivation really comes into play. Understanding the why. I don't think we ask why enough. Oftentimes people come to me and ask me, how do I do this? How do I do that? So everyone's hyper-fixated and focused on practices, tools, templates. I can't tell you how many times people ask me, are there templates for this? And that's not important. Because what you're asking me for, in my mind, I'm saying, well, why would you want to do that to begin with, right? So asking, what's the motivation? Why are we doing this? What's the reason? So there's another great book by an author called Simon Sinek, and the book is titled Start With Why. I call him the 5 why guy, because he's the one that says if you ask why 5 times, you'll get to the root of why, the reason for things, the motivation. So oftentimes organizations say we have to be agile, but it's kind of like a check in the box, or they read some article in CIO magazine or something, or Harvard Business Review, and just to make their stakeholders happy or the investors, they need to be calling themselves agile. But they don't really take a step back and ask, why do we want to be agile? What are we trying to accomplish? And so on. So that's key. And as an entrepreneur in an organization, we should be asking why about everything. Agile says that we should be focusing more on working software than what? Comprehensive documentation, right? So for every document that we produce that's not contributing value to our customers, we should be saying, why are we doing this? In QA, what do? We have a test plan, we have a test strategy, we have test scripts. Then finally we get down to the point of having, we have test cases. Then finally we get down to the point of having test scripts, where we actually test something. Why don't we just cut to the chase and start testing instead of having all this comprehensive documentation? Maybe in some industries and some organizations, you have to have that level of governance. But it doesn't hurt to ask the question, why? Why do we have to do this particular thing? Why do we have to do that? And so on. Why don't we build software in such a way so that it's intuitive, right? I'm sure most of you have some kind of a smart device, iPhone, Android, whatever, Windows Phone, and so on. Those all use paradigms which are intuitive. A 4-year-old can figure out how to use an iPhone. I know this for a fact. Because my kids, I have 5 kids, and they're, all they have to do is pick up a device and start playing around with it for a few minutes, and they've got it all figured out. So we should be asking why and understanding that motivation for our organizations, the practices we follow, and so on. The next thing is having self-awareness. Okay? So entrepreneurs are very self-aware, at least the successful ones. And they're constantly in tune with what they're thinking, what they're feeling. They're interested in their unconscious incompetence. Unconscious incompetence means I don't really know what I don't know, right? Like I may not be able to do something and I'm not even aware that that something exists. So how do I become aware of the things that I need to know but don't know today, right? So that I can now, okay, there's some skill I need to develop. At least I'm aware of that. If you set your mind to something, you will accomplish it. You will. If you remain hyper-focused or laser-focused on your goals, you will accomplish them. It's when people get frustrated that they start to fail. They get frustrated, they give up, they say, well, I'm not interested in that anymore. So if you stay focused and engaged and passionate about it, then you will eventually accomplish it. A lot of times, also what impacts people is not having a clear vision. So going back to that book by Simon Sinek, another thing he says in there is if you can clearly articulate your vision, then you should start down the path. So if you have a clear enough of a vision of your goals and what you're trying to accomplish, and keep that in mind, then you'll be successful. Especially if you try little things along the way and stay at it. You know, be diligent and tenacious about accomplishing your goals. You need to be challenging to yourself, but also realistic. Okay? I don't believe that there's on the internet and stuff, some people say, oh, you can accomplish anything you set your mind to. Oh, really? I'm 46. I don't think I'm going to be winning any swimming competitions in the Olympics anytime soon. That ship has kind of sailed for me. Plus, I'm a little bit of a short guy compared to, say, Michael Phelps. He's like 6'6". In fact, there's not a swimmer out there in the Olympics that's under 6'2". So I don't think even if I set my mind to it 100%, I'd be able to win any Olympic competitions. But having realistic ideas of what you can accomplish, those things that are within the realm of your grasp, that's, and you set your mind to those goals, you will be able to accomplish those. I could play piano, right? If I said I want to become a pianist, maybe I wouldn't be a concert pianist, but I could learn how to play if I practiced and I set my mind to it. I would be able to develop that skill. So be challenging to yourself, but also be realistic a little bit, right? And finally, conclusion, everyone in the organization needs to be a little bit of an entrepreneur. So if we think about what makes teams successful, if you think about any team in the world, professional sports, cricket, rugby, soccer, American football, baseball, basketball, whatever, when we're talking about championships, championship teams, it's not like one person on the team gets a trophy and then everyone else fails, right? I'm from America, so I'll use the example of American football. When we go to the Super Bowl, which is the penultimate competition in American football, it doesn't matter how good the quarterback was. If they don't score enough touchdowns, that team is not going to win. And so it's not like the quarterback gets a trophy for being the best quarterback and everyone else loses. The team wins or fails as a team. So everyone on that team needs to have an entrepreneurial mindset. As an entrepreneur, you know what I do to make my business successful? Everything. anything and everything. If the trash needs to be taken out, guess what the CEO is doing? Taking out the trash. If somebody needs lunch because they're on sales calls, guess what the CEO is doing? Having lunch brought in. So as an entrepreneur on a Scrum team, we need to be thinking about what can I do to make my team successful. It's not about, oh, I'm a developer. I only develop. I don't do any testing. We need to say, look, there's something that needs to be done. There's a document that needs to be written. There's testing that needs to happen. Whatever. How can I move my team forward? How can I make them successful? That's what it means to be an entrepreneur within the context of Scrum. You don't have to start your own business, but thinking about the business or organization you're in as your own business, that will help it be successful. And in return, you'll gain benefit and success from that. So everyone should have that mindset of being an entrepreneur, even in Scrum, and then it will be successful. So what does an entrepreneur look like? We have these common ideas. Oprah, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Richard Branson, and so on. But you know what? You are what an entrepreneur looks like. And now you have a selfie photo of what an entrepreneur looks like. So thank you.
Thank you, Gullo. Being an entrepreneur, I can say, yeah, he mapped very well my mind, my heart in his talk. And I can understand because when I started my company, I know how it looks like. Goal-driven risk, people, everything very well. May I have mother? So for our further program, we are going to have a small tea break of 45 minutes. And then again, by 11 o'clock, we are going to reassemble here.
Yep. And by the way, we don't have any questions for Daniel? How can we let him go so easily? Nobody has any questions for Daniel? Yes, we have one at the back. Yes, James? Let me come to you.
Thank you. I'm pretty darn sure that if I were to try for the Olympics, I wouldn't make it. But let's just say that I did get that idea in my head and say, you know what, I'm going to see what I can do about getting in the Olympics. How would that be bad for me?
I don't think it would be bad. There was, I think he was called Eddie the Eagle from Canada. And he wanted to be a long jumper and, ski jumper, right? Those are those guys that, they go down the big long ramp on the skis and then they launch and they're like this, leaning forward. And I think every single time he did a jump, he crashed and failed. But he was determined to continue on. And if that's what you want to do, then I'm not trying to stop you. Go for it, man. I'm a swimmer myself. I love swimming. But I've sort of said, you know what, I swim because I enjoy swimming. I don't need to be in the Olympics. I'm doing something I enjoy, and I'm constantly making little tweaks on my technique and style. And that's good enough for me. That's my goal now. Whereas maybe when I was younger, I used to want to be more competitive at swimming.
Okay.
Thank you.
More questions? We have one there and one at the front, please.
One of your slide, you wrote, if you are not getting a few complaints each year, then you probably are not pushing the envelope enough. I want to make a small correction here. If you are not getting a few new complaints.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Nice.
That's
a good addition, huh?
important clarification to make, right? If you get the same complaints for 5-6 years, then you should probably hang it up. But yes, trying new things, change is uncomfortable for people, right? Everybody resists change. And some people will come along the way, they'll say, okay, well, we have a change here. There's a status quo, like Virginia Satir writes. There's a status quo, and then there's some stressor that's introduced. And then people try to deny the change or resist the change. And then finally, at some point, they come to accept the change. And then they work towards, moving to the new status quo. But some people aren't able to pull it up out. They never accept the change. And they don't learn from it. They're not really willing to accept the change. So that's where the complaints come from. A lot of times I'll tell people, I'll say, this is what Scrum is about. This is what Agile is about. But they're so set in their ways. They're so fixated in their mindset. And I'm not skilled enough or capable enough. I don't know the right words to say to certain people to help them. I'm not, I'm fallible myself. So maybe they need to hear it from somebody else, or they need to hear it in a different way, or maybe they just never will accept it. And a lot of times that's where the complaints come from.
We have one more question in the front.
So what are the techniques that you adapt in bringing entrepreneurship within the team? As an employee, some of them don't want to take risk. What do you do to bring in entrepreneurial spirit within the team?
So one thing I like to tell people as I'm coaching them and training them is ask for forgiveness, not permission. I think I had a slide up there that said that. If you ask for permission, what are you doing? You're looking for an accomplice, right? You're really looking for an accomplice. If I ask Jaya, hey, can I do this? Is it okay? And she says, sure. And I go off and do that, but that was the wrong thing to do. Then I can say, but Jaya said it was okay.
Blame.
Now we're in trouble together, right? But if I say, look, there's something that needs to be done, maybe it's the right thing, maybe it's the wrong thing, I'm just going to do it. Then all of the responsibility and accountability falls on me, right? I'm acting alone. And it's a fine line between taking initiative, right? People love others that take initiative, don't we? But if you try something and it was the wrong thing, then we say, you're always taking it upon yourself, right? You're always acting like a rogue person. Well, which is it? Am I taking initiative, or am I acting like a rogue operator, right? Because it's a fine line. If I take it upon myself to do something and it was the right thing, then I'm seen as a good person. But if it was the wrong thing, I'm seen as a bad person. But I'll tell you what, when you act in a certain way and you believe firmly in your heart that it was the right thing to do, nothing bad will happen to you. I honestly and firmly believe that. If you get in trouble in your organization for doing something you firmly believed in your heart was the right thing to do, then you don't belong at that organization. And there's a better place for you somewhere out in the world where that's valued, taking initiative. So that's what I would encourage people to do. Don't ask for permission. Ask for forgiveness.
Good. Yes, one more question there, and the last one. Last two.
The question is, as you left a relatively comfortable, secure corporate job to take up this entrepreneurial line, did you have moments of serious doubt that, hey, maybe this is not such a good idea? And how did you deal with that? Or how did you prepare yourself for that?
Do I have moments of serious doubt? Yeah, but about every 10 seconds.
Right.
I don't know if you've seen this picture on the internet. It says what the world thinks an entrepreneur's success looks like, and it's like a straight line up to the top. And then there's another picture that says what it really looks like, and it's like a roller coaster. And initially, in the first part of it is, oh, I feel great today. This was the best thing in my life. And by like 10 o'clock in the morning, it's like, oh my God, somebody kill me. And then it's like, oh great, we got a client. And then it's like, oh my God, they're not happy with the contract. So it's not a straight path to success. There's constant doubt. As I was saying, there's constant fear, right? Every 5 minutes I say, maybe I should go back to the company I was working for before. Especially with a family, right? I'm a father and a husband, and it's constantly on my mind. Am I doing the right thing? Am I providing for my family? What if, what if, what if? But 90% of those fears are things that will never happen. And so we shouldn't succumb to those fears. We should acknowledge, I'm going to have doubts. But if something happens, I'll deal with it when it happens. I'm not going to put together a risk management plan for everything, right? Okay, one last question.
The last question, yes, please.
Sure.
Hi, Daniel. Good morning. It was a great talk on a gloomy Wednesday morning. Thank you for that. And just one curious question. You mentioned that you, after your graduation, you got into your corporate job and realized that you weren't making life easy for yourself and the people around you. And then you came to know about Agile, and then probably went back to your management and suggested that we could adopt Agile, but they didn't agree for that. The most obvious path many of us would take in that scenario would be to find a company where Agile would be accepted and go for that. How did you make a distinction that you wanted to branch out and start on your own rather than going into another company that allowed you to practice Scrum or Agile?
Well, it wasn't an easy decision. I'll tell you that much. And I'm not saying that if you truly get agile, then you need to leave your company, okay? If you stay in your organization and stay in a leadership role, then become a leader. Don't be a manager, okay? Acknowledge that you're not going to have all the answers. So we should be putting a lot of the decisions in the hands of the workers, those who are the closest to the work. And I never liked being wrapped up in the minutia and the tactical and operational stuff anyway. So micromanaging people doesn't result in great solutions. As a leader in your organization, I would focus more on decentralized decision making, right? Empower the workers to make decisions. And furthermore, trust them, right? Trust and empowerment don't happen by waving some magic wand or scepter that says, you're now empowered. Why? Because I can also take that back. If there's a decision to be made, and I say, all right, guys, here's a problem we're trying to solve, here's a decision that needs to be made, I'm going to go back to my office and let you guys work on that. Then I've left a gap, I've left an opening, and the folks that I want to make the decision will step into that gap because they're like, well, we have to do something, so let's get together, let's figure it out. That way, they're being empowered by, accepting that empowerment and taking the empowerment. For me, like I said, it's just in my power. Just in my fabric to, own my own organization and establish myself as a leader. I can have control over what I do for my employees and so on, and I can be that empowering leader and so on. So that's why I decided to go on my own and launch my company. So
Sure, thank you. Hope your leg gets better.
We're out of time for now.
Thank you. We can take more from Daniel outside in the tea break. So sorry about that because we're out of time for this session. Okay. Thank you, Daniel.